Welcome to the Firehouse Roundtable podcast, brought to you by the Ventura Fire Foundation. My name's Peter McKenzie. I'm one of the hosts. I'm a retired fire captain with the City of Ventura Fire Department.
And I'm Jason Kay. I'm an active fire captain also with the Ventura Fire Department.
And we are excited that you are going to spend some time with us at the kitchen table, learning about firehouse issues that we're trying to bring awareness to.
Thanks for joining us as we discuss the issues of being a firefighter, both on and off duty, and how it affects us.
Let's get right to it.
Hey, welcome back to the Firehouse Roundtable podcast. We have a fun and exciting guest on today. How's it going, Peter?
I'm doing good. Yeah. Everything's good. Looking forward to chatting with Tiffany. I'm hoping she has some good insight into how we can support the spouses and the kids and the families of firefighters.
Yeah, we get a brief bio usually when we do these things, and I was looking over the bio, and her bio just goes on and on things that align with what our mission is for the foundation.
Yeah, she's got a ton of experience, and excited. Let's get into it. Okay, so on today's show, we have Tiffany Atalla, who is the Director of Clinical Development and Training at First Responder Wellness. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist, and we are excited to have you here with us today. So welcome to the show, Tiffany.
Hey, thanks so much. I'm excited to do this.
Yeah, so for the sake of our listeners, maybe give us a quick couple-minute bio on who you are, kind of your background, and let's go from there.
Okay. I hate talking about myself, so here we go. Let's see. I am fortunate to be the Director of Clinical Development Training now, like you mentioned, at First Responder Wellness. And actually, we're a family of companies, so that'll lead me backwards. I've been fortunate to work with first responders, which is my love and passion, is to help the people that are my family and my people and my friends. And I've been doing that for the better portion now of 18 years. My background's in trauma care, specifically with what we can do with that really interesting type of trauma where you have it in your personal life potentially, and your job is to interface with trauma on the daily with your job. So that's what I really study and focus. I was formerly the clinical director of our all first responder treatment program here in Southern California, First Responder Wellness, and had the opportunity to develop the trauma care program with Dr. Odom, as well as we focus on substance use disorders or misuse. Prior to that, if we take a couple steps backward, how did I get here? I've always worked in fields where I worked with first responders. So I started out my job early on as a therapist. I was working in a juvenile diversion program with substance use disorders. So I was working with law enforcement a lot and getting to know that community. And then from there, ended up working with Child Protective Services as a supervisor. And so, medics show up and law enforcement again. And then ultimately, somewhere along the way, thought, I really want to do more for our community-based stuff. So I ended up in a police car, riding in a police car, doing psych response team 40, 50 hours a week. And along the way, helping the mental health issues in the community, I started working with fire, with code enforcement projects and the Hoarding Coalition, which is super interesting when you're 5'2" like I am. And they're like, hey, why don't you climb in this house and see what craziness is there? And I started my practice focused on working with responders back then. This is 2009, if we walk back. And I realized, as much as I like helping the community, my love is really helping my first responder community. And so hopped in working with the Counseling Team International. We do critical incident stress debriefs for so many different organizations, fire, law enforcement across the nation, but primarily Southern California extended forward, and as well as provide counseling services and training. And then I ended up somehow, some way helping with behavioral care systems with Shift Wellness, which is our other sister company. And we go all over to different fire departments and we help them with their behavioral health and wellness care programs. And now I write a lot of training. That's really what I do. And I go out and teach, and it's really proactive mental health training and also family care, because I'm a fire spouse as well. My husband's a fire captain locally. And so living the life, it's just really nice to talk to our people. And I think that sometimes y'all don't want to come home and necessarily share the nitty gritty of all the bad stuff. And maybe as a spouse, we don't necessarily want to hear it when we're doing shift exchange with our kids and our lives. But I think that it's important to really understand each of each other's jobs and roles so we can be better. And I could just go on and on. But along the way, one thing I found is that if the home life isn't solid, it's like, why are you doing this job? A lot of people are working super hard. So I'm really devoted to that in this part of my life.
I'm excited about diving into your work with the families and also being a fire wife. Just out of curiosity, where does your husband work? What department does he work for?
So different last names. I joke that people had to look up. I really am married to firefighter. No, he's Fire Captain Hernandez at Anaheim Fire Department.
Gotcha. And where are you guys? Do you guys live in Orange County or?
We live in Orange County. Yes.
I want to know if you married a firefighter before you got into this, or if you got into this and then married a project, kind of like a bunch of our firefighters whose wives are psychologists and therapists.
Well, the truth of the matter is I was working with all cops, right? And then if they'll tell you what happened, they said I changed teams on them because I was riding a police car full time. But no, he was in the fire service before, and I just have family and friends all in law enforcement and fire and stuff. So it somehow, some way I ended up here.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to talk about your resume also. I do the podcast from one of the bedrooms in my upstairs in my house. And I had to go back downstairs 3 times because I'm printing sheets out going, oh, there's more. Oh, cool. This is really the basis of what we're really shooting for with our foundation is family, mental health, and firefighter mental health and awareness. So we got a lot to talk about. This will be fun.
Oh, thanks, Jason. Yeah.
Let's jump right into it because we don't have a ton of time. And I think we could talk about this subject for a long time, but I want to get into a couple things. One, I want to talk about the event that you're coming to do. But before we get there, kind of give us a compare and contrast between firefighter mental health and the mental health of the families that are back home. And how are the needs different, or are they different? Or kind of speak to that a little, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So I'll sit with firefighter mental health right now. I mean, gosh, right now, the call volume's higher than ever before. You're doing more with less. Still similar types of calls, but when they're stacked, it's exhausting. And we've got a lot of burned out folks, especially with the staffing patterns. So it's not just what we call vicarious trauma of showing up and seeing things that you just can't unsee, but it's also just the chronic stress. In the fire service, you used to be able to maybe count on 1 hour of the day, maybe being your own time. And hey, I know the jokes run around about, riding the couch or, cooking all this stuff. But really, I think that was one of the ways that firefighters would get together and regroup and sit around the table for a second and blow off some steam. Like, we just saw a bunch of this stuff, but we're going to take an hour regroup. So I always thought that was the better part of the fire service versus law enforcement, like how you guys would be well. But right now, that's not necessarily happening. And folks aren't going home necessarily. Like, they're waiting to see if there's going to be anybody to cover the next day. And so I'm finding that that's really what the biggest struggle on the forefront for our fire service members right now. And in turn, that affects the family. So historically, as a wife, as a spouse, seeing my kids and what they go through, there's that, what we call secondary trauma. If dad comes home and he's exhausted and I'm like, hey, you got soccer practice and I got all these things to do. And here's shift exchange. Like, I'm giving him the nursing report and fire hosing him with all the things he's missed. He may not be responding to me as a spouse the way I want because he's just underslept. He hasn't decompressed and landed yet. And the kids feel that. If dad slams his truck door, it's like, who's coming home right now? And that really carries over that secondary traumatic stress. So as it heats up more in the fire service, it's heating up more at home. And guys and gals in the fire service are saying to me, after I've been in this career 20 years, it used to be, I love the job. I love the calls. Everything was fire service or bust. But now it's like, this is a job and there will be a retirement and I'm doing this for you all, the kids and the family. But some of them are losing their kids and family along the way to divorces and being cut off because it's messy. So sorry for the long answer to that, but I think there's different things going on. And it really boils down to communicating about the different stressors and the needs we have on both sides.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. So I didn't the last thing you said at the end there, like with call volumes going up and workload and mandates and never not going home for multiple days in a row, that it clearly is a stressor on the firefighter and the family. But what you said about like, okay, a lot of people are converting how they look at the role as more of this is a job. I need to get to retirement so I can like have this life without all these stressors. But if they lose their family in the process, then what was it all for? Like it was all for nothing, because obviously I think everybody would argue that your family is more important than the fire service ultimately. So yeah, that's interesting. So what do the families need the most from a support role? Like what like services that you guys offer, or what are the needs that the families have that maybe is a lack of awareness on how to get help or lack of people that can help, or what are the needs for the families primarily?
Absolutely. It's a fewfold. I mean, one need is connectedness. And, back in the day, the fire service was the fire family. And I know a lot of us are really wanting to bring that back, but life gets in the way. It's like, yeah, I'd love to go to that event, that barbecue, but I got 3 kids in, competitive soccer and all these other things, and I've been gone. Or my wife wants a date. And so connectedness is a huge piece of that. Like, let's get us back to having pure stuff, things we did together so we know each other more than passing at work. Because a lot of the spouses, they show up at the Christmas party, but they don't know each other the way we used to know each other. They don't have personal care. Like, hey, he's out of town. Let's just do dinner potluck with the kids and take care of each other. So I think we got to get back to that, number one. Blessed to get involved a couple of years back. Brilliant gal that's also fire wife, Jana Mooney, and a businesswoman. We sat down and we said, you know what? Let's bring that back. We started the Anaheim Fire Family. It's our little nonprofit. It's not a wine club. It's not a Rotary or whatever you want to call it. But essentially the goal behind that was to make sure that we had the connectiveness coming back with activities where senior fire spouses that have been around the block and raised kids were helping our newbies and vice versa. And then what was born out of that is getting a bunch of wives trained in peer support. And it's the idea behind it was that if they understand more of the trauma on the job and they're learning it from professionals and not hearing it from their husband, right? Because that's how we learn best, is when we don't hear from each other and we listen to someone else. And they're getting certified in peer support. When stuff goes down with the department, we're able to reach out and help. And ironically, we put that together right before COVID. So we have some pretty cool examples of how we were able to help. I'd be happy to share. So if I go back to it, I think it's the preventative education from the departments, like we do families on the front line where we get the couples together, we're hearing the same message, and then we got new tools to handle and tackle what we do as fire families. And then getting these spouses peer support trained, because my husband's one of the heads of peer support, and he'll call guys out on injury and be like, hey man, how you doing? How are you healing up? And he's like, oh, it's good. I've been putting my foot up, watching some shows, kicking back, got the World Cup on soccer. Like, everything's fine. And then with Anaheim Fire Family, we also follow up and we'll call the spouse. By the way, we got permission, y'all. The union backed us, we got permission. But we'll call the spouse and say, how's he doing? And they'll say, oh my gosh, it's a nightmare. No one's visiting. He keeps complaining about that. I think he's depressed because he's snapping at the kids. Like, please have one of his buddies come by or something, because it's going downhill. So we realized to get the real deal and the whole picture, we needed to get the spouses back involved and trained.
One of the things that you touched on that I wanted to go back to for a minute was more and more guys are feeling like, our firefighters are feeling like, for instance, in the 80s and 90s, you had this huge fire family push. And when the guys were out on the lines for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, especially on brush fires, the families would get together and take care of each other. And nowadays, it feels like everybody's putting everything they can on duty into the fire department. When you ask them to do more, whether that's volunteering or helping each other out, the consensus is, I just don't have time. I have kids, I have family. When my husband's at work, it takes everything out of me. I'm sure you hear this a lot. What are you seeing? Where do we go from here to take care of each other when not only the firefighters, but the families are feeling pretty burnt out as well?
Man, I have big opinions on this one, so watch out. I think we can do as much as we can at like getting the spousal peer support, making sure that the younger generation gets educated in what's ahead for the families, because it's all exciting to be married to a firefighter, right? It's like, oh, this is great. And then we see what it's really like. It's lonely sometimes. And we need spouses to learn how to be independent or to be able to help each other when that water leak happens or whatever happens. And everything bad happens when you're on duty. That's when our homes fall apart. So that's part of it. Because I have the wonderful opportunity to train at departments nationally, I have seen that the departments that are putting a limit on how many days people can work consecutively and are really getting in there and caring about their members and not just giving lip service to this mental health thing, it's better for the family. The marriages are staying together. The firefighter comes home less taxed. In fact, they're also more interested in doing ancillary stuff like joining peer support where you don't get paid or helping out volunteers, Santa in the Hills and stuff like that. So I think some of it stems back. We got to get leadership on board with protecting our firefighters. And a lot of that has to do with hiring and staffing patterns and fighting the city on getting more men and women in the fire service. But you know what? That's not popular for me to say. So
do you have a number specifically on shifts or hours or that you recommend we don't go over?
I actually do, because I recently wrote an article and I was touting the idea that we believe that medical residents are a risk for the care of the people they serve. They're dangerous basically after 80 hours of poor sleep. So if we're asking our medics and our firefighters to be operating, heavy equipment and trying to save lives, and they're there more than 80 hours, that's concerning.
Yeah. When you say poor sleep, do you have less than how many hours a night?
Well, absolutely. We need to be getting a minimum of 6 hours a night. And it's pretty unrealistic at a lot of departments to consecutively get even 5 hours. I don't know if you guys have gone through the times of having little babies that wake you up all the time, but we're all walking zombies during that time. And mood regulation's terrible. We're quick to snap. Like, it affects our health. There's so much to that. It's mental health and physical health. Yeah,
I personally decided I'm not going to make any big decisions or have any big conversations my first day off after work. And that took me like 20 years because I feel like I don't have enough days off. But when I come home and I make a decision or I have a big conversation, it's usually not a good choice the first day anyways. So you just write that one off.
I love it. And those are great conversations proactively to have with your spouse, which I'm sure you have. Like, hey, this is my operating MO so that we have better life and conversations and resolutions. So
absolutely.
Yeah. I can speak from just my own experience. Like, when I had the most problems at home or the most conflict, it was always related to how many days I was at work, how much I didn't sleep. And a lot of people view this as, oh, it's just don't whine about this. This is the old school kind of mentality. And I think we need to move past that, because one of the issues is a lot of the people in the leadership roles are been around a lot longer and maybe don't look at the same as this, new generation of firefighters and professionals that we're now engaging with, people such as yourself. Like, we didn't have therapists that came to the fire service way back when. So I like how when you boiled it down to, it's staffing. Like, if you work too much, it's problems at home. Like, in that respect, it's very simple, right? Like, work less, be home more, not as tired, spend more, give more attention to your spouse and kids, and things will get better. Like, that's quite insightful, even though it seems simple on its face value. You said something earlier that when you get the spouses and their husbands or vice versa in a room and you go over tools and tricks to help, can you open up a little bit about that? What are the tools and tricks to help these couples?
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? We love doing these classes. There's a lot of laughter in these classes. I'll tell you what, usually people are a little nervous to get in that room and do this. They're like, I don't want to air my dirty laundry. No, dirty laundry is aired. So we do this course. It's called Families on the Front Line. It's a lot of fun. And in the beginning, it's all about education. It's like, hey, let's educate what it's like in the shoes of your spouse, even if we think we know. And then let's talk about the real stuff. Secondary trauma for the kids, chronic cumulative stress, what happens in the body. Like everyone gets the same education, same space, can ask questions. So now we're caught up kind of. And then we spend time doing, I call it advanced communication techniques, but just the stuff that gets us. Because I don't know about you guys, but I didn't go to a special school to learn about being married before I got married, right? And most of us didn't. Maybe we got a little premarital counseling. And if we didn't have the picture perfect parents to watch growing up, it's rough. Like we didn't learn conflict resolution tools or we didn't learn communication. So in that class, we learned a couple funny ways to communicate differently, to synthesize things, and some conflict resolution. I call it like debriefing. Like you would do an after action report after a call, but oftentimes we're just happy the argument's over or the disagreement. We're like, okay, everybody's laughing again. It's under the rug. Let's not go back to that. And what ends up happening is you sweep enough things under the rug and later on in life, you trip over the rug. Okay. And so what we try to do is teach some real proactive ways that you debrief. And it feels good for the firefighter per what they've told me, because it sticks to the point. They feel like it's just not endless talking. They have something they could do in the future, a takeaway, and ready, set, go. And it usually feels good to the spouse because they feel validated and heard, and they know they're heard because there's been clarifying questions by their partner, all that good stuff. So that's what we get deep into in the class.
That's awesome. One of the things you're saying and you said earlier too, is get those guys in there early in their career. That'd be a great thing, either right off probation or even right before the academy, to come in, especially if they have spouses and even more if they have kids, just to learn how to use those tools and the expectation on both sides. Because a lot of times the firefighters are taken care of, and then the expectation is you come home, you get to sleep. And we know that's not fair, and that doesn't happen, and it shouldn't happen. And then the wife is, also, you can't expect to say, oh, you're home, here's the kids, I've had a rough few days, I got to get out of here. So I think both sides of that is really important. The earlier you can get that, the better.
I totally agree with that. And we're trying to do it sooner and sooner. Recently, I was teaching a little at Ontario, and we did it right before they hit the floor. It was kind of fun to see, though, because we had some folks that were laterals. They'd been married, had kids, like you mentioned. And then we had some girlfriends there or boyfriends, and a lot of them were pretty wide-eyed. Like, whoa, I had no idea. And so it was the rich conversations that happened. And I hope all those relationships stayed together. But for those people that thought, oh, this is just so fun to be dating a firefighter, I think they might have thought twice or really invested and said, this is something that we got to honor and have pride about as a family, because it's a lifestyle.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because everybody thinks it would be so cool to date a firefighter and it's exciting. And then it's hell, being married to a firefighter. It's a totally different game, right? I've heard that many a times, and it's absolutely true. I got a question for you. So I think what you're talking about is great. At what point do you identify, because in full disclosure, our foundation, the Ventura Fire Foundation, is trying to get clarity on how we can better serve the families, which is kind of what we're talking about here. And I think what we've discussed so far is awesome. At what point does it need to go farther? At what point does a professional need to get involved for like one-on-one therapy for a spouse? Like, what does that delta look like? And then I know you're involved in like multiple organizations. Maybe kind of go into what's available, like what services you or people like you offer that's a little bit more than just what we've already discussed.
Oh, absolutely. So again, take it with a grain of salt because I'm a therapist, but I really believe that the best marriages get their oil changed, right? Like if you don't get your oil changed in your car, you know what's going to happen. It's going to be big problems. And I don't ever see a firefighter that doesn't change their oil. But yet when it comes to marriage, it's like, it'll be fine. We'll get to it later. We'll schedule that date when we can. We'll go see that professional for coaching if the wheels have come off the bus, if we're in crisis. And so what I would say is us moving to a more proactive approach where it's like, we just do a check-in. We get an oil change for our marriage. We probably gather a few tools because we're too busy to read and synthesize all these books. It's your job, therapist. Hey, with my kids, if my son wanted to get better at pitching for baseball, I pay some pretty good money to hire a professional pitching coach. And I think most of the dads would, right? If we thought they might get that college scholarship or whatever. But when it comes to our relationships, we put it on the back burner. And yet there are really good marriage coaches that are trained at it. And that's what they study. So I would say having something where we start early in the career and suggesting it, and then having that follow-up care. What we're recommending to departments is that people use their sessions. And one of the programs I work with is the Counseling Team International. And so for the departments that we work with, we offer 10 free sessions per issue per family member. Could be your teenager that's struggling in school. With that, what we see is a lot more people coming in the back door to do some marriage coaching. And it's not when things are falling apart because they don't have to pay for it. The department has supported mental health and decided that this is one of the pieces of the pie. If we keep our families strong, then our responders will feel cared about and happy, less missed days at work, more likelihood they're going to stay on the job longer. So,
gotcha. So let's talk about access to that. So this Counseling Team International has contracts with local fire departments, I assume. Is
Yes.
that accurate? And then what happens if a department doesn't have a contract with that organization? How can these couples reach out and get care somewhere? Like what are the resources that are out there? Because that's one of the things that we find in our foundation is sometimes it's hard to get our people to get access to information. We had a previous organization that went out of business and caused some problems, and we're kind of in this in-between area.
Yeah.
What is your experience or advice for someone who maybe doesn't have a contract with that company?
Yeah, that's a great point, because it's also area dependent. I'm assuming some of the people that are going to be listening, they might be out of state and they don't have that. So that being said, we want to make sure that you're seeing a culturally competent clinician. It means it's someone that came from the background of working in it. Maybe they've been a former EMT, or like I mentioned, I rode in a police car 40, 50 hours a week doing psych response and did projects with fire. So it wasn't so foreign. And some of them, maybe it is a little foreign, but they came from having a dad who was a chief or whatever. And so they love this. And then they learned about therapy, and then they did some specialized training to work with first responders. I'm always going to say, make sure that person's culturally competent, because a lot of times we got one shot. Like if you get someone to go to therapy, you really have one shot. And if that therapist is a wacko, they're going to say all therapists are wacko. I'm not doing this again. So knowing who's in that network, we often have really good referrals, area specific. And I'm always happy to give them. A lot of us are in private practice. I have my private practice too, and love dedicating my life to just seeing fire couples, basically.
Yeah, because I know that from interactions I've had with our guys who have tried to get help, and like just a constant run around, and it was difficult. And I think that's one of the things that we need to kind of clean up. I don't know if it's just a local problem we have here, but that's why I was asking, like, if someone wants help and they raise their hand and go, yeah, I could use some help, but they don't have a contract with that organization, like the actual, like, how do I go from A to B and get the help is, I think, the hard part, or one of the hard parts.
It absolutely is. And I really wish we just had this national network. Like if you were the real deal, you're there on it. So it'd be easier. But what I will say is that if you're a listener and you're trying to get this help, absolutely call us at the counseling team, because even if we don't have a contract with you, we know other good clinicians all over, because we are all over. And so we're really happy to help find you someone and refer. I think word of mouth is always best.
Hey, this is Joe Booth from the Ventura Fire Foundation. To learn more about the foundation and our programs, visit our website at www.venturafirefoundation.org. 100% of our funding comes from generous donors. And if you like what we're doing, I encourage you to become a donor. It's very easy. Just go to our website, again that's venturafirefoundation.org, and click the red donate button at the top. Whether it's $5 or $5,000, every donation helps ensure local firefighters thrive.
We need a subsection of the EAP to have, okay, for first responders, here's a little subsection. Because I know some guys who, when we didn't have a contract, who would call the EAP and go, man, they just don't get it. They sent me to somebody who's, like you're saying, clinically competent, not so much. When you do your training and what you would call clinically competent, is there any part of training to deal with firefighter spouses as well, or is it all geared toward kind of acute trauma day to day, what you see as a first responder?
I'm glad you asked that. It's absolutely family relational. So one part of our specific training for cultural competency is that they have to attend, shadow, and usually give some sort of redaction on how it went going to a significant other survival or a families on the frontline class. They've already had a lot of education in school about couples therapy, if they're a real couples therapist, right? But then it's definitely, how does that apply to responders? And so they have to kind of jump through some hoops to be a culturally competent clinician, which is a good thing, right? If people really want to do this, then we want to make sure that they're dedicated to that.
I actually opened my therapist's eyes, I think, when I went a few times, and he says, "What do you do for a living?" And I told him, and he says, "Oh, I've dealt with some of you guys before." So it definitely was a little bit different of a reaction, and I could tell after the first couple sessions that I might be going somewhere off of his radar, and that he wasn't expecting.
Isn't that interesting? Or they say, every week you should have a date night. Like, why don't you just pick a day, Friday? And we open our calendar. We're like, okay, we'll do a date night every 9 weeks on a Friday. Because that's just the life. I did want to mention though what some places are doing, because they're going to their EAP, which are grateful to have that benefit, and they're finding that no one's culturally competent, is they've been reaching out, and we have a portion of what we do in their family companies. It's called Shift Wellness, and Shift Wellness is focused on helping with EAPs or behavioral care contracts, even if it's helping them hire, and we vet clinicians that will join that EAP to help you. To serve you. We see 94 small departments in Idaho. We go out there, provide their training, and we vet their clinicians with their EAP now. So lots that can be done. It's just hard to do it.
Yeah, super cool. Let's pivot for a second. And I want to plug the event that you're coming into town to help us with. So on February 9th at 8:30 at our fire department headquarters, you're doing, I'm actually going to ask you more specifics about what you're doing, but basically it's our foundation is bringing you in to help train our spouses to be competent in this peer support. And the way that we're able to do it, first off, is the Fire Family Foundation, which is a nonprofit that's associated with the Firefighters First Credit Union. Elizabeth Deaver is the executive director over there and helped us basically get a grant. So the Fire Family Foundation gave us a grant, which allowed us to bring you guys over. So big thank you and props to the Fire Family Foundation for helping us do this. But we're excited about it. I want to kind of give a little, not a preview, but what can the spouses who want to attend expect? Like, what's it going to look like?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. And I love Firefighters First. We have that credit union too. So what it's going to look like, it's actually going to be a pretty intense, comprehensive peer support training. So the training is going to go through all of the categories that a firefighter would get if they were going to be a peer supporter. But yet the focus is going to be shifted a little bit more to the family base and what do we do with that information? Like, how does that apply to the family? How does that apply to you as a spouse and your children? So it's going to be taking that information and then making sure it's really readily applicable to the life and how we support one another as fire spouses. Some of the things that we're going to go over, obviously, we're going to talk about trauma and the many forms of it. And they're going to spend some time also identifying like the trauma they brought to the table. And that's what I like about the class. It's very interactive. It's private. They're going to have their own experience of it, just like a peer supporter would. Oftentimes, firefighters marry some really amazing, cool people that are survivors and really independent. They came from families and maybe had a lot of their own trauma. So we spend time in understanding what it's like with what they brought and then with what their partner sees and does and has too. When we get deep into a little bit more crisis intervention skills, like what do we do if we know another family is struggling? What do we do if our spouse needs help? And how do we become that linkage to have the conversation, hopefully engage, have motivation, and have readily available resources? And so oftentimes the conduit between getting help is that peer supporter. And you guys are making it possible in terms of Fire Foundation and these supporters with the Fire Family Foundation are making it possible for you to have really good trained people for the fire families. We're going to talk about suicide prevention, which is super important, recognizing those covert signs I can't tell you how often I've had family members who've lost a firefighter say, I wish I'd had these uncomfortable conversations. I wish I'd called their buddy. And I wish that I could do something different. I don't want anybody to live with that kind of grief and guilt. So we really get deep into the practice and the scenarios with that. We talk about substance misuse, how it develops. Sometimes it's not that someone was an alcoholic, but they're trying to numb and they've done this job too long. And maybe there's some untreated anxiety, trauma, stress, injuries along the way. So that's a little bit of an overview. And then, of course, my favorite part is talking about the family education and fire service relationships, the uniqueness. And then we get some overview of the basic tools that can be implemented at home.
I think they're going to end up doing a train the trainer in your session. That'll be like a train the trainer, a couple hours that they get to have with you. Do you guys have a setup for a program to go from there with how to get everybody else involved and the other spouses?
The other spouses involved that aren't attending?
Yes.
We definitely would be interested in coming back and making sure they hear the same information because, like I mentioned earlier, it's hard. Even if you share friend to friend, it's not the same as if you read it in a book or you hear it on a podcast or you have a clinician come talk with you about it. So I think this might open up to needing to have seasons of this training if people are really interested. And in turn, will make a stronger foundation for the department because if home life's good, things are better. Along with that, at some point, definitely having a families on the front line, that's something you can involve every single person in a department and invite the couples to come to. Plus, it's fun. People usually will have dinner there or something.
Awesome. Just to say it's open to all the spouses, fire spouses in our area. We still have some spots open. So if you're listening and you think you might want to go, absolutely sign up. I think you can go to our website, venturafirefoundation.org, and it's on there somewhere. I'm not 100% sure on that, but we'll get you to the right place if it's not. But yeah, that's awesome. So this is like, we've kind of gone through a couple different iterations of trying to support the families we just had Ashley Iverson come into town a couple weeks ago. And then Dr. O's was here, I think pre-COVID, and now you. So we're trying to really make it a focus on the families and supporting them because in my opinion they're the real heroes. It's definitely not the firemen. But you mentioned the fire, or I forget the name of it, the organization of spouses that you did at Anaheim. What was it called again?
Yeah, Anaheim Fire Family. What
were some of the best practices, the things that work the best that we could potentially, if somebody wanted to do something similar here, shorten our learning curve a little if somebody wanted to get involved and do something similar? What were the things that worked the best?
Oh, absolutely excited to talk about that. What we learned along the way is that it needed to be backed by the union and by the peer support team. And so in order to get backed by the union, they've been great. And we agreed to help them make sure there was more attendance at events and help promote the good things that they were doing and putting money towards during the year, right? Or trying to raise money for. So that was one big thing. And then the other request that they had is that we have our list of spouses or girlfriends and that we ask the firefighter for approval because you know how it gets messy where relationships on the rocks, there's divorces. And so that was their sign off for us if we would send out approvals throughout the year so that we made sure we were up to date and that we kept the drama away from it. So I just wanted to mention that because we don't want drama. Other things we did is make sure we did a 501c3. And we actually went ahead and got some pretty cool swag, hats and shirts. And I'm seeing all over that the kiddos are wearing them. The grandparents love it. It's great gifts, but that's been able to raise some money for us to put on events to bring the kids to and to bring the families to and further education for things like the peer support training that you guys are going to have. So hopefully that helps a little bit, but we definitely had to get everyone on board and go present at the union meeting to make sure they voted us in.
Gotcha. No, good tips for sure. The fire service is weird because you have all these different organizations that are involved. You have the fire department itself. You have the association or the union. Now we have like foundations that are getting involved. So it is weird. Like there's a little bit of navigation amongst the groups that is required to have any chance of success type of a thing.
And we have a board, by the way. I just wanted to mention that we mirrored the union board. And so we have board members that do the same thing so people know who to reach out to. And so I think it being more official it was easier to get accepted as a program.
We have a women's auxiliary that is probably closely related to what you're talking about, maybe a little less formal.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have our foundation, and we're trying to, I don't want to say sync everybody up, but kind of sync everybody up so we're all on the same page and kind of rowing in the same direction. And we don't have like competing organizations that are trying to do the same thing, which would not be ideal. But I love that you guys organized it. I mean, getting the 501c3 is, there's some hoops to jump through there. I think in our case, we already have that really established with the Fire Foundation itself. But yeah, very good. Anything else you think? Well, actually, I got a question for you. If you could wave your magic wand and change one thing about the family firefighter dynamic that would make a lot of this better and some of these problems go away, what would it be?
Oh, I think better control of our lives, right? This is a job of being reactive or responsive. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, knowing that you're going to be able to have those days off, because it's kind of like work in general. If you know that you've got so much on your plate, but you have a little mini staycation or vacation coming, it's like you can handle it. But if there's no end in sight, it makes life harder. And it makes those conversations that we're putting off to have because you're at work and we're trying to talk, you're standing behind the rig and the tones go off again. So we just say pause, but it makes it easier to plan like, all right, we're going to have conflict resolution in 2 or 3 days because they're coming home on that day. So I know that that's something that we can't necessarily resolve. So to give you a second answer, I think it would be to just have this family support and then make space for the spouses to do their own healing, called tribal healing, right? But to have their own network of people. We started a retreat. It's called the Sage Retreat. Have you guys heard of that by chance?
I haven't. No,
I've not.
No. The Sage Retreat is probably one of my favorite things to do, but it's for the spouses to get away and deal with all of what it's like to be a fire spouse, to, kind of deal with like what's happened in the relationship over time. I always say it's like a year of therapy in 3 nights and 4 days. But I think having the funding to send more spouses away that are struggling, because if their firefighter's been struggling, they've been struggling. They've been holding down the fort and they've been doing things. So when we get the firefighter well, if they go to treatment or do intensive therapy, we haven't had something for the spouses. And so we created this to get everyone dancing at the same time. Like, let's take care of them together.
How often does that happen, or where does it happen?
So we do the Sage Retreat about every 6 to 8 weeks. And we have a retreat center in Idlewild, California. So it's pretty and there's trees and it's neat. There's a lot that we do there. Of course, there's things like getting a massage, which is much needed, and having the spouses cooked for the whole time. Delicious meals. They can't lift a finger to do a dish. Like, it is their chance to break away. But they're also getting tons of education and working through some of their own stuff. Because sometimes we rain on each other because we haven't had the time and space to take care of ourselves. So it really does help the whole system.
We should probably connect offline. Maybe you and Joe can have a conversation, but that's something that I think would be awesome for our foundation to potentially fund for the spouses. I don't know what it costs or what's involved.
Yeah. That'd be so fun to have your community go just for you guys.
Yeah. We're looking for ways to support the family. And if I'm being totally honest, it's difficult. It's not like a very cut and dry, like, yeah, this is how you support the firefighter spouse. You do X, Y, Z, and it makes it all better. Like, that's not the case, right? Like, it's from my perspective anyway, it's more complex. It's difficult to go, okay, we run this organization, the Ventura Fire Foundation. We want to support the spouses. Essentially, what do we do? Like, we bring, people like you and organizations like yours in, and there's an education component. But if we want to take it farther, like, it's hard for us to go, oh yeah, just write this check and send so-and-so away. So the fact that you're talking about this Sage Retreat, like that's very interesting to me, and something that we could potentially send people. Jason looks like he's nodding along, but what do you think, Jason?
Yeah, I agree. I have a couple specific questions. That's actually something I think would be super valuable, and most people around us wouldn't even know it existed, and they'd be very interested in it. How long is each retreat?
Sage Retreat is 3 nights and 4 days. So typically we'll do a Thursday start just because it's easier to get that time off with if they're working too, or kids' schedules. And so we usually do a Thursday midday start, and then people are done by lunchtime on Sunday. And it really feels like a lot is accomplished in that time. And I originally had a lot of firefighters that were worried, like, oh my gosh, what's my spouse going to talk about publicly? And then that has completely shifted, where the rumors gotten around that they come home smiling and happy. They have their own cohort. They call it a sisterhood, but of people, all ages and stages that they stay friends with forever. We've had over 110 women go through the Sage retreat, and I've told them all the same thing. If any of you feel like you didn't get what you wanted out of this, or it wasn't like a year of therapy condensed to this time or a year of growth, then let me know, because we're going to figure out how to get your money back. And so we've yet to have anybody, and we have all of these alums, so it's pretty neat.
That's awesome. One of the other things you mentioned a couple minutes ago was that you guys do events even for the kids or the families that include the kids. What kind of events do you do that are for the entire family?
Oh, with Anaheim Fire Family?
Yes.
So that's been fun. They did a pumpkin patch type event. It was just to get the littles out. They've been doing also regional, because we have regional coordinator events, and, everybody lives in different areas. You guys probably have people that live in Ventura, but then live in Oxnard, and then maybe even live more towards the city. And so we decided we'd have little regional events, even if it's just meeting at the park or doing a cupcake share at Valentine's Day. So they haven't always been large scale. We just did a beach day event, and I got sick, so I wasn't able to attend, but it was a lot of fun because that was couples. So yeah, they've done a great job. I did step away. I'm in support of them because I'm working so much, but I'm still actively involved as a member. So
yeah, speaking of you working so much, going over your bio, there's a ton we still didn't even touch on yet. I see you do some equine therapy, you do dog therapy. You work with all kinds of different groups and people. It's pretty impressive. It looks like a pretty cool variety of things that you support and you're involved with, all revolving around mental health and firefighter, first responder wellness.
Well, thanks, Jason. It's definitely a dedication. And just like everything else, it's a team effort, because my husband comes off shift and he's Mr. Mom too. And I'm grateful for that. So I feel like we both are figuring out a way to work full-time home, full-time job, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, just like in marriage, right? It's not 50-50, it's 100-100. We learned that a long time ago.
Right?
Yeah.
So, or it gets off kilter and rather than I'm going to get mine, just being happy we can pour some into their glass and hope some spills over into ours, right?
Well, Tiffany, this has been awesome. I think it's great, the work you're doing, and I would love to have you come back on. Maybe we do like a debrief after the spousal support, or talk about kind of how we develop this connection further to bring more help and support to our families. But it's been awesome. I appreciate you coming on the show. Any last things we didn't get to cover that you want to share? Or
Thanks, Peter. Just that we're not shy in reaching out, because I think we all know there's just been so much stigma around mental health. And I think we can look at it different. If we call it mental performance training, which is what we call it, really, there's tips and tricks. There's ways you can mitigate stress. There's all of these different things that we can do, either as a family, as the spouses, or as actually the firefighters. And if we shape the way we do this just to make our brain health stronger, it's going to help us last longer in our relationships and hopefully not get sick on the job. Because my goal is that more people stay married and feel fulfilled, and that we don't lose as many good men and women to the fire service because you're passionate about that job. And if there was stuff we could do along the way, the outcomes might be different.
Well said. Well said. Do you want to give out a way to get a hold of your counseling team for people who want that help?
Sure, absolutely. So if you go online to the counselingteaminternational.com, it'll direct you to all kinds of services all over. And if anybody is struggling to find it, don't hesitate. You can reach out to me directly. I have 2 emails. One is Tiffany.Atalla, Atalla @frhealth.com, or my private practice is bestsolutionsTherapy@gmail.com. And I'm happy to point you in a direction anytime, or just talk it through.
Sounds good. Well, Tiffany Atalla, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate all that you're doing, and it's been an absolute honor. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. Wow, that was a good podcast for sure. I mean, her stuff couldn't have been more relevant to what we're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about all the things that she's involved with and all the specific tips that she gave to our firefighters and their spouses really hit home. A lot of times we kind of glaze over stuff, but this was really specific, and I feel like the upcoming training for the spouses is going to be great.
Yeah, let's just plug that again. So February 9th at the Public Safety Training Room, which is the AO there at the Ventura Fire Department, 1425 Dow Drive. So if anybody's interested in coming, reach out to us. We have some spots still. It's open to firefighter spouses. It doesn't matter if you don't work, if your spouse doesn't work for the Ventura Fire Department, it's open to all firefighter spouses. You know what I thought was interesting was when I asked her, hey, what's like the one thing, if you could change it, what it would be? And it was something along the lines of teach spouses how to talk to each other and how to unwind after the firefighter comes home from a shift, and how not to get involved in important discussions right away. And I think you chimed in on what you do regarding that too. And then also how it was tied to don't work so many shifts, because the longer you're at work, guess what? The worse things are at home, the worse your own mindset is. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, there's definitely a balancing act there that you got to find for yourself, understanding that family dynamic. I was super impressed when she talked about the SAGE first responder spouse retreat. We're definitely going to have to hit her up about that and dive deeper into how we could be a part of that. And then the other one I really liked was when she talked about having something set up for the firefighters and their girlfriends or spouses before they hit the floor. And I thought a lot of the stuff that I talked to with some of the newer guys is because of 20 years of experience and what I wish I would have done and it took me 20 years to learn, and to have all that stuff lined out for you before you even hit the floor would be great.
Yeah, talk about shrinking the learning curve for sure. Also, one last plug out to the Fire Family Foundation, who made this spousal peer support training possible. So they gave us a grant. Super grateful, excited about our relationship with their foundation. And I think the majority of our firefighters already bank with the Firefighters First Credit Union. So it's a good symbiotic relationship that we're excited about.
Yeah, they've donated to the stair climb for 9/11, the ball, and Stash Fest. Pretty much every time we reach out to them, they're willing to help us out with whatever we're asking for. So that's really cool. Great episode, Pete. Looking forward to the next one. Hope you have a great week.